The world doesn't break your heart by being cruel, it does it by being unfair. And nothing screams unfair like a power-drunk HOA turning a kid's walk home into a public shaming. Ethan Carter, my son, was 16, the kind of kid who'd rather solve calculus problems than cause trouble. On a roll, math Olympiad gold, debate team captain, his backpack was heavier with medals than books. That afternoon, he was walking home from the library, earbuds in, humming to some lo-fi beat, when the first shout pierced his bubble. "Hey, you! What are you doing here?" Mrs. Linda Grayson, self-appointed queen of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, stood on her pristine lawn, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like she'd caught a thief red-handed. Ethan froze, pulling out an earbud, confused. He'd walked this route 100 times. "I live here," he said, voice steady but soft. He pointed to our house, 3 doors down. Linda's lips curled into a smirk, as if he'd just confessed to a crime. "You don't look like you belong," she snapped. Her words weren't just wrong, they were a blade, slicing through the air with the kind of casual venom only privilege can wield. Ethan, with his dark skin and lanky frame, didn't fit her vision of Willow Creek's ideal resident. By the time I got home from work, the scene had escalated into a circus. Linda had called in her posse, Tom Reynolds, a retired cop who treated every neighbor like a suspect, and Karen Walsh, the HOA president whose voice could curdle milk. They'd cornered Ethan on the sidewalk, their accusations flying like shrapnel. Loitering, they called it. Suspicious behavior. My son, who'd spent his Saturday volunteering at a food bank, was now a criminal for existing in his own neighborhood. I stormed out, heart pounding, and saw Ethan standing tall but trembling, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "What's going on?" I demanded, pushing past Tom, who had the audacity to step in my way. "Your son's been trespassing," Karen said, her tone dripping with fake concern. "We're just protecting the community." Protecting it from what? A kid with a 4.0 GPA? The crowd had grown, neighbors peering from porches, some recording on their phones, others whispering. Mrs. Alvarez, our next-door neighbor, looked horrified but stayed silent. I wanted to scream at them all, to shake them out of their complacency, but Ethan's eyes met mine, pleading for me to stay calm. He was always the better one at that. "Ethan lives here," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You've seen him at every block party, every HOA meeting. You know him." Linda scoffed, tossing her head. "We can't be too careful. There've been break-ins." Break-ins? The last crime in Willow Creek was a raccoon knocking over a trash can. Tom chimed in, his hand resting on his belt like he was still on duty. He was lingering too long near the community garden. Looked like he was casing the place. Casing the place? Ethan, who'd helped plant that garden last spring? I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but Ethan spoke before I could. "I was just walking home," he said, his voice cracking but firm. "I didn't do anything wrong." Karen stepped closer, her phone out now, filming him like he was evidence. "We'll let the board decide that," she said. "You'll be hearing from us." The threat hung heavy, a promise of bureaucracy weaponized against a kid who'd done nothing but exist. The next week was a nightmare. The HOA sent us a formal letter, accusing Ethan of violating community standards, and demanding a hearing. A hearing. For walking home. I spent hours gathering evidence, school records, volunteer logs, even photos of Ethan at neighborhood events. My husband, Mark, wanted to sue, but we couldn't afford the legal fees. Instead, we prepared for the hearing like it was a trial, coaching Ethan to stay composed, to not let their bias break him. The night before the hearing, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring at his math textbook without reading it. "Why do they hate me, Mom?" he asked, his voice so small it cracked my heart. I wanted to say they didn't, that it was just ignorance, but the truth was uglier. They didn't hate him, they hated the idea of him, the challenge he posed to their perfect, homogeneous bubble. "They're scared of what they don't understand," I said, pulling him into a hug. "But you're stronger than them." The hearing was held in the community center, a sterile room with fluorescent lights and folding chairs. The HOA board sat behind a long table, Karen at the center like a judge. Linda and Tom flanked her, their faces smug. Ethan stood before them, his shoulders squared, wearing the blazer he'd worn to his debate nationals. I sat in the back, gripping Mark's hand so tightly it hurt. Karen read the accusations aloud, her voice monotone but venomous. On the afternoon of October 12, Ethan Carter was observed loitering near restricted community property, displaying suspicious behavior. Suspicious behavior. The phrase was a slap, reducing my son to a stereotype. Ethan didn't flinch. He presented his side calm, articulate, devastating. He showed his library receipt from that day, time-stamped minutes before the confrontation. He listed his academic achievements, his community service hours. He even mentioned the garden, how he'd helped choose the marigolds because they deterred pests. The room was silent when he finished, but Karen's face didn't soften. "We appreciate your story," she said, the word dripping with condescension. "But rules are rules. We can't have people wandering without purpose." Wandering without purpose. I wanted to leap up, to scream that my son had more purpose in his pinky than her entire board, but Mark's grip kept me grounded. Then Mrs. Alvarez stood up. She'd been quiet until now, her hands twisting in her lap. "This is wrong," she said, her voice shaking. "Ethan's a good kid. You're targeting him because he's different." The room gasped. Karen's eyes narrowed, but Mrs. Alvarez didn't back down. "I've lived here 20 years, and I've never been so ashamed." For a moment, I thought she'd turned the tide. A few neighbors nodded, murmuring agreement. But then Tom stood, his voice booming. "This isn't about race," he said, though no one had mentioned it. "It's about safety. Safety." The word was a shield, deflecting truth. The board voted 3-2 to issue Ethan a formal warning. A warning for walking home. We left the center in silence, Ethan's head down, his blazer wrinkled from clutching it too tightly. At home, he went to his room and didn't come out for hours. When he did, he looked different, older, harder. "I'm not going to that garden anymore," he said. "Or the library. Not here." My heart sank. Willow Creek had taken something from him, something I couldn't give back. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood moved on. Linda mowed her lawn, Karen sent out newsletters about new mailbox regulations, and Tom patrolled the streets like a vigilante. But Ethan changed. He stopped wearing his earbuds, stopped humming. He walked home faster, eyes on the ground, avoiding everyone. His grades stayed perfect, but his spark dimmed. I'd catch him staring out his window, not at the stars, but at the street, like he was waiting for the next accusation. One night, I found him packing his debate trophies into a box. "I don't want them out anymore," he said. "They don't mean anything here." I wanted to argue, to tell him they meant everything, but the words stuck in my throat. The HOA hadn't just targeted him, they'd stolen his trust, his sense of belonging. The final blow came months later. Ethan was accepted to a prestigious STEM program at Stanford, a full ride. We were packing for his move when Mrs. Alvarez stopped by, her eyes red. She handed me a petition, signed by a dozen neighbors, demanding the HOA board step down. "It's too late," I said, my voice hollow. "He's leaving." She nodded, tears falling. I should have spoken up sooner. Ethan's last day in Willow Creek was sunny, the kind of day that made the neighborhood look like a postcard. As we loaded his bags into the car, Karen drove by, her window down. She didn't say anything, just stared. Ethan stared back, his jaw tight, then got in the car. We drove away, leaving behind a house that no longer felt like home. The HOA won, in a way. They got their perfect community, free of suspicious kids like Ethan. But at what cost? My son, who once dreamed of changing the world, now questions if he belongs in it. What would you do if your community turned on you for no reason? Is justice possible when fear and power outweigh truth?